rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else than your machine. Wasn't always just a single shade, a palette full of gray in reverie. And I can burn it brighter than the sun. I have a golden gun inside of me. Don't box me in, don't, or I'll leave. I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else. And if I fall behind, ignoring all the signs, if I lose the fight, I still rage against the night. Don't box I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else than your machine.
From around the world, this is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to a Friday episode of the World of Gaming because, well, happy Halloween. I went trick-or-treating yesterday with the kids, so we had to move this week's podcast to a Friday, but I'm even more excited today to do the podcast because there's plenty to talk about. And I can't wait to do that with you, Dutch. How are you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. For some reason, all the balance was out on the audio there, and yours came across unbelievably loud for people. So I've just had to correct that. I hope it's better. I don't know what's happened there.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, it was like off the scale, and it was just completely in the red permanently. I don't know what that was all about. Let's hope that's fixed it a bit.
Okay.
You can tell I haven't
Audio
podcasted in a couple of weeks.
yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Indeed. Whilst fixing the audio issues, let me welcome our awesome community. Big shout out to you guys. Hope you are doing well, and I hope you enjoy the games you play. And of course, we are looking forward to discuss a lot of interesting stuff this week with you guys.
We've got a few games to talk about as well.
And a few games, man. But actually, plenty of games. Yeah, so it's gonna be an awesome show today. I can't wait. Even though the Friday evening slot is kind of unusual for us, but that doesn't matter.
Yep.
We have plenty to talk about. But I want to also shout out, of course, our listeners that do listen after the fact, either here on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are listening. We have to apologize, Dutch, briefly to our Spotify and Apple Podcast community. We've had some weird YouTube technical issues that prevented us from uploading last week's episode on Spotify, or the last World of Gaming episode on Spotify, and I tried to fix it. What can I say?
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to deal with YouTube issues. It's like, yeah, whatever. We do hope we will be able to upload this week's episode to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and so on. So apologies for that, but with no further ado, Dutch, let's get into the show and let's talk about the games we play.
Let's do it. Jingle time, people. Jingle time.
Indeed. So, Dutch.
Yes.
It is been actually 2 weeks since we had last talked to our community. So we want to hear from everyone here in the chat. What have you guys been playing? And Dutch, what kept you busy?
Yeah, so I think at this point I hadn't quite finished Visions of Mana when we last had a podcast, but I have now finished Visions of Mana. I'm on the post because there's another chapter after the end game. So you've actually got a whole different new chapter after the end game, which is actually story related. So it expands the world a little bit more, opens up a part of the map that was inaccessible before. And there's another final boss there to go against. So that's the last place I left it, was just before that final boss, because I wanted to kind of do a couple of the 100% achievement stuff, like finding the cactus everywhere and things. So I've left it at that part so I can go back and kind of tidy things up before I fight the final boss and get the kill him on hard achievement, which is not going to be easy. Outside of that, and I've absolutely loved it, by the way, I think as it stands right now, Visions of Mana has overtaken Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as my game of the year.
I would agree. I haven't finished it yet, so
Yeah.
but it is on good track. The further you get into the game, the better it becomes. It is just phenomenal game. The gameplay is super fun. Once you get the hang of the combat system,
Yeah.
the story is fantastic. The characters are great. The world and level design is phenomenal. So
Yeah.
I'm having a blast with Visions. Yeah, true that.
Yeah, it's an awesome game, honestly, and it was my first Visions of Mana game, so I'm happy that I was convinced by yourself and Hertog to jump into Mana, because you both absolutely loved it from childhood.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that recommendation, much appreciated. And as it stands,
You're welcome.
it's my game of the year. There's not many games
Sweet.
left to play of this year that might pip it. As much as I love Astrobot and what I played of the previous one, I don't think Astro's gonna take that title. It'll be a fun game, no doubt, and I'll have fun with it. But my game of the years usually revolve around some form of story game that I've played. Just that way. Like Crash Bandicoot, as great as that used to be, I would never have put that as a game of the year title contender for me. Just my preferences. And of course, we've still got Indiana Jones to come, but I don't believe, as much as that's going to be fun, that will take it away from Visions. Stalker to come.
Although the previews say it's gonna be a fantastic game, man.
Yeah, so I've heard. Same for Stalker. That might be absolutely amazing, but I just don't envision it overtaking the awesomeness that was Visions of Mana. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. I might be surprised by a couple of the titles left to come out this year, but we shall see. And I think I'm going to pick up Dragon Age this month. So
Yeah, I highly recommend that. I'll get to that in a second.
So we'll see what happens with that. Outside of Visions, of course, like a lot of people, if not most people, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, both campaign, zombies, and multiplayer with awesome friends that we've been playing with. Fanto, well, I don't even think I've played with Fanto yet, but we're going to have to sort that issue out. Esky, with Pat, with Shom, and numerous others. It's been a good laugh. So been playing a bit of zombies as well, and zombies is fun as always. It's hectic as hell. You get absolutely annihilated after like round 15. It just gets ridiculous. And round 19's ridiculous. 20 even more so. You just get absolutely swamped with with zombies. There's a few little things where you can exploit it in the levels. Thanks to Sean for pointing a couple of the exploits out, which is good. Kind of gets the zombies to walk away for a bit so you can get a breather. But yeah, that's super fun. The multiplayer is super fun. There's obviously Nuketown's come out today. Haven't had the chance to play it yet, but after the podcast, I'll be jumping on that for a bit and seeing what Nuketown's all about and getting some double XP weekend in. But when we talk about the campaign, I think it is back to good form for Call of Duty and the Call of Duty campaigns. I like the mixture of some of the stealth levels that we've had, some of the option-based sections in the levels. I like there was an open world map as well that we've played on there with the sniping, a kind of sniper's heaven, should we say, where you get access to kind of dropping bombs on sites and getting air support in and surveying the entire map and taking out kind of certain targets. Building the story a little bit more that way. If you actually explore that map and go to all the different locations on the map, there's a lot of different kind of things for the story that are embedded in audio tapes that they find around the place.
Sweet.
So I like the way that they kind of done that. And of course, then you've got the hub level where you can kind of level up your character and choose new abilities and say, okay, well, now I can have 3 armor as opposed to just the 1. I can add extra ammo. I can have quicker aim down sight speed. I can have more grenades. I can do this, that, the other. You can kind of pay towards that. You can kind of add new areas into the house and upgrade weapons and your abilities. So I like that implementation on there as well. So no, the campaign's absolutely fantastic. The multiplayer's fantastic in Zombies is. So
it is. I've been playing that myself.
Yeah.
I haven't jumped into the multiplayer yet, but I've been playing the campaign, and I do agree, man. I'm absolutely surprised by how much I do enjoy that campaign. Obviously, it's a Call of Duty campaign, a lot of big set pieces happening, but I do enjoy the story. I haven't finished it just yet, but I think I'm pretty close to the end. I do love the one mission where they dive into zombies, some kind of zombie mode in, what was it called, Embark or something, where you fight zombies and monsters, and it's fantastic, man. That level really creeped me out, which is surprising in a Call of Duty game, right? And I had a blast playing that so far. I think I'm pretty close to the end, but I got a little distracted by Dragon Age. So,
I always knew you'd get distracted by Dragon Age. You've been waiting for it.
Yeah, well, it is so obvious, right?
Yeah.
Anything else you've been playing, man?
No, not so far. No. Obviously, when Call of Duty came out, and because I'd already pretty much done everything on Visions and it was just mopping up the 100%, I was able to kind of go, right, okay, I can drop Visions for a second. I can kind of do the 100% in the background. That's fine. I don't need to be on that constantly now. So I've just been playing and enjoying Call of Duty this last week and making the most of it. And enjoying all the modes, getting used to the zombies and seeing what zombies is about and what we should do and how to play it properly, and the multiplayer and ranking up on that a little bit and having some fun with friends. And then, like you say, the campaign when I'm not getting invited to games because I'm just too influenced here. Every time I try to play the campaign, I get invites to play multiplayer, so I jump on multiplayer instead. So I'll eventually get through the rest of the campaign, but probably won't be this weekend with Nuketown coming out. But outside of that, no. Like I say, I'm going to. I think Dragon Age is going to be my next single player game. So,
which I definitely do recommend to you, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What has the community been playing? Dustin Lambert has been playing Legends of Mana and Brotato, and he says you need a guide for Legends of Mana, or otherwise you get stuck to the point where you can't progress in the story. It's a fun game, though.
Right, okay.
Julia has been playing Black Ops 6. Yeah. Again, like probably most here in the community. Yeah. It is really good though. We'll talk about a little bit later about the success of Call of Duty Black Ops and what it's done for Game Pass. Stormplayer has been finishing part 1. The question is of what? And he's been playing Call of Duty. Lily in the chat has been playing New World, but she's pretty much done with it. The end game is poor, she says. And also a little Call of Duty, of course. Yeah, man. Did we miss someone in your chat?
Yes, a couple. So the Apiarist, now renamed to Agent Galeforce. I think that's a much easier name to say.
I've seen it. I don't.
He's been playing Dragon Age: The Veilguard, RoboCop, and Brotato. For good shouts, all
RoboCop.
good games. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Peraf has been playing Black Ops 6 and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Again, 2 awesome games there. Studos has been playing Black Ops 6. And Phantosir has been playing Dragon Age on PlayStation 5 as the frame rate is a little bit more stable. Okay.
So, Pyro has been not playing much these last 2 weeks, but he played a little Yakuza 5 remaster. Yeah. And the Ruham has been playing... he says, I've been playing one of the first games that has on the movement called Stranglehold. I've never heard of that game.
I've heard of Stranglehold, but that's an older game, that I'm sure it is.
Okay. All right. Dustin Lambert follows up and said he had to start a 16-hour save in Legends of Mana because I did too many things out of order and it broke the game. Man, that sucks. Play Visions of Mana. You won't run into those troubles there.
Nope.
Fantastic.
Beautiful game.
Fantastic game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the poll in the chat for today's gameplay voted for Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 campaign.
Ooh, nice.
I didn't expect that. I thought people want to see Dragon Age, but we can do Call of Duty.
I thought I'd recorded Call of Duty gameplay, and I don't think I actually ended up doing that. So everyone's just got Visions of Mana again this week, so I apologize.
Well, see, I don't know. For a couple of months now, my Xbox is acting super weird when I try to record gameplay.
Yeah.
Like, it stops all the time. I had to, sometimes after 10 minutes, sometimes after 20 minutes. For whatever reason, it just stops recording and telling me I need a faster drive. And I've tried every USB drive and USB stick I have in my household, and it's definitely not the sticks because I've been using the same ones for years now, and it's like, I don't know what it is, but it is super annoying. And the only way to fix it is to actually unplug the console.
Yeah.
And plug it in again, and then I can record one clip, and when I start the next one, I will get the same problem again, and
weird.
It is super annoying. That's why I have multiple 20-minute clips. But yeah, I lost a lot of gameplay footage due to that on Call of Duty. So we'll switch to Dragon Age a little later. I was a little bit more lucky with Dragon Age recordings. But yeah, it is super weird. Anyway, what have I been playing? Man, of course, I talked about Call of Duty, the campaign. I was out of town for work reasons last week, so I didn't start it when when Black Ops came out. I started this Monday, but I'm already, again, like I think almost done, maybe 1 or 2 missions left. I'll finish that a little later or over the weekend, and because I got a little distracted by Dragon Age, man. And Dragon Age is fantastic. I'm really, really enjoying my time with that game. It is exactly what I've hoped for. I'm still pretty early in, so it's early impressions, like maybe 4 hours now.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, BioWare is back. I know people are hating on that phrase on the socials, but it really feels that way. It looks fantastic. The Frostbite engine does a really good job. The art style is gorgeous. It's colorful. It has a fantastic HDR implementation, like super deep black levels, popping colors. And you go from like colorful environments into dark and gritty areas. And it just looks absolutely stunning. I'm playing on Xbox. It looks even better on PC, of course. Also, I definitely want to shout out BioWare for releasing the game in a complete state. Yeah, it already has quality and performance mode on Xbox. It has the photo mode, which a lot of AAA games
What
seem
engine
to
are they running on?
patch.
Do you know?
Frostbite.
Is it Frostbite?
It's Frostbite. It's Frostbite game. Yeah. And it does a really good job. Like the lighting is fantastic. The texture quality is really good, at least when you play in quality mode. Performance mode looks good. It looks good, but you definitely notice when you get close to textures, like close to a wall, close to the ground, you can really tell it gets blurry.
Yeah.
Digital Foundry did an analysis. It drops down to 500 something p in performance mode.
Right.
It does that when it gets hectic, and in that case, you don't look close to the ground, though. But still, yeah, performance mode looks okay in motion. You know, it's not like, remember Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where the performance mode wasn't playable.
Yeah.
That was definitely like too blurry. I wouldn't say that's the case in Dragon Age, but you definitely lose a lot. And especially when you like take in the scenery and but in motion it is okay, not super great, but you can definitely play it that way if you want to. I tend to I go back and forth at the moment, but actually the quality mode, even though it's 30 FPS, but it's a very solid, stable 30 FPS, you get used to it and you definitely gain a lot in visual fidelity there.
Have you tried it on PC yet?
I have not. It's not Play Anywhere. So I bought it on PC. I bought it on console, so I haven't played it on PC yet.
It's a shame that it's not Play Anywhere.
Yeah, it is.
I think it should be
Play
a standard.
Anywhere should be a standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially after seeing of all companies, after seeing Square Enix implement that as standard, I would hope other companies start to do it as well. But I know what EA is like, so
yeah, no, but they've done a really great job. I have not encountered a single bug.
Yeah,
nothing. It runs good. It no clipping, no collision errors, no pop in, no nothing. It is no bugs. It's fantastic on a technical level. I really wouldn't argue about the game. If you can deal with the 30 FPS, you're in for a visual treat. Fantastic art style, and gameplay-wise, it is awesome, man. Like, the combat is fantastic. You have like 3 classes you can choose. I'm playing as a warrior. I was tempted to go mage because usually I play mage in these kind of games. But for some reason I went with warrior, and I'm loving it, man. The combat is super smooth. It feels impactful. Like, the way you upgrade the skill tree is awesome. You add like great superpowers that you cannot spam, but you have to use them more tactical. They have a great shortcut menu where you can like also tell your companions to do like their special moves, and it feels fantastic to play. Like, I'm really loving it. You get these across the missions. You often find like certain mini bosses that are super fun. I like that they have 7 difficulty levels. So it's not like easy, normal, and hard or so. You have like 7, and you can really like adjust the difficulty just the way you want it. It's the UI is super good, like very intuitive, and great menu to manage your characters, your companions, your skill trees, like really good. I'm digging the story, very well written.
Yeah.
Like, so far, a lot of these high fantasy RPGs have these kind of complex stories, and usually when I started Dragon's Dogma, I had no idea what's happening in the first 10 hours or so until you really understand the lore and what is happening.
Yeah.
That's definitely not the case. Even if you haven't played a Dragon Age game before, you can absolutely follow the story. It's clear what is happening and what's going on, and the story is really good, man. So far. I'm not sure if the game will open up, because the 4 hours I've played so far are all very linear levels. Like, no open world or open areas. It's like you go on to a mission, linear, follow the corridor, and I actually do enjoy that, man. It's great. To not have like this gigantic open world and go anywhere. Yeah, so I finished chapter 3 now, and maybe the game opens up a little later in the game. I don't know, but so far it's a very linear game.
Yeah,
but fantastic, man. I can't wait to play more. It was hard for me to put the controller down today. So
Fanto's saying it opens up after the crossroads, and you have a hub base for in between missions.
Okay. I'm not at the crossroads yet. I finished chapter 3. Can't remember what it was called, but
yeah.
So, Infinite Umbra says, is it just me, or is there no audio? I do hope there is audio.
No one else has pointed it out, so hopefully it's just Umbra.
I hope that it's just Umbra, which would suck in itself, but...
Yeah. He said he's reloaded and it's fine.
Reloaded.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Whew. No, so man, it's... Dragon Age is, again, only 4 hours, and I know I will be playing that game for 70 to 100 hours. Nice. So still early, but first impressions, very strong, very strong.
See, I don't mind putting in like that much time into a game, because if I have a look even at Visions, which technically would be maybe it's a 30-40 hour game if you play it normally, I've probably put in close to 100 hours on Visions.
I don't think you can beat Visions in 30-40 hours.
I think if you just
streamline it... I've barely done any side missions, and I'm already 30 hours in or so, and I'm not close to finishing it.
Yeah.
By the way, I've also played Visions, of course. I played that on the alley when I was traveling last week. but then I decided to hold off on the game, not because I'm not loving it. Again, it is probably going to be also definitely in my top 2 this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I told you that before. I got the very sad news or bad news that I need to go and get a surgery in 2 weeks, and I'll be spending a few days in the hospital. And I need something to play on my Ellie. And since Dragon Age is not play anywhere, I can't play that on the Ellie. So I decided to pause Visions for now, continue that then on the Ellie, and finish that in the hospital, and then and play Dragon Age for now. And I don't regret that, because man, Dragon Age is really good. And you listened to me with Visions of Mana, and it turned out to be your game of the year, right?
Yeah.
So listen to me and go get Dragon Age. It is your type of game.
I will. I'm expecting that. I hope that I like it as much as you like it, and I do end up putting in lots of time. Like I say, if I love a game, I'll put hundreds of hours into it. I did the same with Final Fantasy Rebirth. I smashed that to bits, loved it. Then I played Visions, and I've smashed that to bits. Any game that I truly love, I don't mind getting sucked into it and just soloing that game and then putting everything on the back burner. So hopefully, when I play Dragon Age, I get the same feeling, and I want to just continue playing, and the story drags us in, and I like the building of the characters and the upgrading. So yeah, it's fingers crossed. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far.
You won't regret it, man, if you get it. I'm sure of it. I know your taste in gaming, so yeah. All right, Dutch. I think that was it for what I've played this week. So let us talk about some actual news, man.
Yes, let's do that. Jingle, jingle.
All right. Since we are on BioWare,
yes,
the BioWare CEO came out. Not the biggest news of the week, but since we are on the subject, BioWare has talked a little bit about the next Mass Effect after releasing Dragon Age, and they said that. Or they confirmed that Mass Effect definitely will have a mature tone and photorealistic visuals. That's important for them, because Dragon Age went with an art style that I wouldn't describe as photorealistic. It looks phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, right? But it is like little stylized and overall, but they want to have that mature tone and a photorealistic art style and visuals in Mass Effect. So what are your thoughts on that, man?
Nice. I think at the end of the day, I don't think people are too bothered about its art style to a degree. What they want is a better game than Andromeda. I think a lot of the fans were just let down by not the graphics or the gameplay of Andromeda, but mainly the story. So I think on that side, people are just wanting BioWare to get back into the swing of things with Mass Effect when it comes to the actual story and creating memorable stories like they did with the original trilogy, Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. And people, of course, loved the original trilogy, and people still go back and play the remastered trilogy now as well, because obviously that's fantastic and well done. But Andromeda didn't do that for people, and they kind of want them to get back into their best with that. Now, saying that, Dragon Age is just released. People who have played Veilguard have said this is back to BioWare's kind of best when it comes to the kind of story aspect of it.
So from what I can tell so far, I absolutely agree, man.
So
the writing is great. The way how you interact with the companions and so on, it's definitely BioWare.
Yeah. So that's all you can hope for, is that they get back to that for Mass Effect as well.
Yeah.
And really all they're saying here is kind of implying we went for a different thing for Dragon Age, but kind of just let our audience know we're not doing the same kind of art style that we're doing for Dragon Age for Mass Effect. We're doing more photorealistic for Mass Effect. So I think that's kind of probably why he's come out and said that, is mainly because of some of the people that have seen Mass Effect and Dragon Age and thought, I wonder if they're doing the same thing for Mass Effect and it's the same kind of stylized art style. So I think he's maybe preempting that. In the sales world, that'd be called kind of preempting an objection and overcoming it before it's coming to you. So you're already saying, okay, I know what they're going to say, so I'll get there first. And I think he's just doing that.
Yeah.
I think he's just getting there first and saying, listen, Mass Effect's going to be photorealistic, and we're going to be concentrating on more of a mature tone. Dragon Age was a little bit different and went a little bit more stylized for that end. So let's see. Like I say, Andromeda was okay, but it wasn't something that a lot of people were too happy about when it come to the story aspect, or even like there's the woman with the dead eyes on Mass Effect Andromeda, who everybody remembers.
Yeah,
you're talking about in the station, it's just dead eye.
I think that listen, Andromeda wasn't that bad of a game.
It wasn't, but it wasn't the best.
Connect?
Yeah.
It wasn't like the Mass Effect trilogy. I mean, the Mass Effect OG trilogy is one of the best trilogies ever made.
Yeah.
Right. So Andromeda definitely didn't live up to that.
Yeah.
But it was in itself a good game.
Yeah.
Not one for the ages, but definitely enjoyable. But it didn't help that it launched with that many bugs.
Yeah.
And the eyes, you remember, or the facial animations in general, definitely didn't help. If you play it now, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, when it came out, Mass Effect Andromeda definitely was a buggy mess, and it didn't help. I think if it would have launched in this day and age, people would have been more forgiving, because as sad as it sounds, we are kind of used to getting broken games.
Yeah.
If you think about it, which AAA game comes out and is bug free?
Yeah.
Dragon Age is. But
I think on that though, I think even if it would fit into now, I think it's just that for, like you say, for BioWare standards, the story wasn't one to remember like the original trilogy was.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what they're remembered for. BioWare's remembered more for their stories than they are the actual gameplay in itself. I don't remember the Mass Effect trilogy so much for the gameplay aspect. I do remember it for the stories and the choices and the characters you could bring along with you and the development you can have between them all. And that's what people remember, the story aspect of the trilogy, more so than the gameplay aspect. And that was the thing that got me with Andromeda. People were more bothered about the fact that the story wasn't up to par compared to what BioWare's used to. So that's ultimately what they need to focus on. So as much as it's great to hear that they're going down photorealistic route, all Mass Effect fans will be more concerned about is the
story and companions and the connections you build with the characters. And I agree. Do you think Shepard is coming back?
Possibly. I mean, if they want to do, let's go fan service, get back to our best, one thing we know that will hit or resonate with people is, let's bring Shepard back and let's kind of reboot the series.
Yeah.
And I think a reboot of Mass Effect might be the best way forward, because much like Halo, going to Halo Infinite, people were like, the story was good, but it wasn't a memorable story, and they could have done so much more with it. And now we're hearing of Halo is going into reboot territory now, and they're kind of just doing things on a different engine and going from scratch there. And a bit like Gears, who were on Gears 5 and could have went to Gears 6, but instead of going Gears 6, they've opted to reboot and start from beforehand with E-Day. And I think these are the best options for all of these franchises, personally, is to, what we did in terms of continuing with the series wasn't working the way we hoped it would. People enjoyed the games, but they're not memorable games. So let's reboot it, let's start again, and let's really recapture what made us great. And I hope all three of those franchises do that. I hope Gears gets that with ED. I hope the new Halo does when that launches on Unreal, etc. I hope that resonates with the OG. And I hope Mass Effect gets back to its roots with BioWare and ultimately is a reboot for the franchise and gets it back into the legendary status that it once was.
I want to add Fable to that list.
Yes. That's a good shout.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the thing with Fable that's a little bit different. I think Fable's the only slightly odd one out as well, because with Fable, it's their first ever. Yes, it's rebooting the franchise, but it's also that studio's first ever attempt at it. So that's kind of a okay, let's see what you can do kind of territory. Whereas with 343, they've had multiple titles now where it hasn't really panned out.
Yeah.
With Gears,
true that.
The Coalition took over, of course, and they had a couple of titles that were good, but they weren't anywhere near as good as 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Same, like I say, Mass Effect, original trilogy, fantastic. Andromeda, not up to par. So let's see.
Yeah,
we can hope. We can hope. And I hope it's a reboot. I hope they just reboot the franchise.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, I think I'm doing a bold prediction now. I think the story will revolve around bringing Shepard back.
Yeah.
Because from the teaser trailer, the one CGI teaser trailer that we got, it would definitely get those vibes.
Yeah.
You know? That's my prediction. The story of the next Mass Effect is about how they bring back Shepard. H. Julia sends in a super member chat for being a channel member for 9 months now. Thank you so much, first of all, for the continued support. And the super member chat says, I trust you now. I'm downloading Dragon Age, and I am sure you're gonna love it. So definitely hit me up and let me know what you think of Dragon Age. Because I'm absolutely loving it. And it gets better the more skills you unlock, like crazy better. It's super fun. Dustin in the chat says Mass Effect 1 is still the GOAT. I'm team Mass Effect 2, man. Mass Effect 1 was a phenomenal game, but 2 was just chef's kiss.
I see these arguments all the time, whether or not it's 1 or 2. I never say 3, but always 1 or 2. That's the argument.
Yeah. I even think 3 was fantastic. I know people hated the ending of the trilogy,
but as a whole, people love the entire trilogy, I think. But the argument has always been between which was best, 1 or 2. It's a bit like, even if you have a think of Halo and you have a think of Gears, it's exactly the same argument. Like, you'll never hear someone say Gears 3 was the best Gears. It's always which was best.
Oh,
1
you
or
hear
2.
me saying that?
Yeah.
You hear me saying, I think Gears 3 was the best.
Nah. So I love Gears 1 for the original tone it had, but I loved Gears 2 more. Yeah. I think Gears 2 was mine.
I mean, Gears 2... The thing is with Gears... I mean, Gears 1 was great and all, and I love the more darker horror tone, but I played Gears in a very Gears 2 in a very special time in my life. Yeah. So I hold it very dear for that reason. But 3, it was just no spoilers here, but the moment halfway through the story, like. Man, I had to put the controller down. It was like so touching, and the way how they concluded the trilogy and the storyline, and then the multiplayer was just so good. I played a shitload out of the multiplayer in Gears 3. I played a lot of Gears 2 as well, but I don't know. Gears 3 for me is just. Dustin says Mass Effect 1, 3, and then 2 in that order. Yeah, no, man.
See, with me with
No way.
Halo, like I loved Halo 1, but one
Yeah.
of my favorite, I think my favorite Halo is a toss up between Halo 2 and Halo Reach.
Ooh. I mean, Reach was awesome.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. But I think still
And
the
that's
Halo
surprising to
2.
say, and I think a lot of people also say Reach was probably one of the best Halos because that was a game that did not include Master Chief, that included an entire different Spartan outfit.
Yeah,
Yet the story was fantastic. The characters
it
were
was.
memorable, and it also shows that you can release a Halo game that isn't about Master Chief and resonates with people.
Yeah.
Um, so we can see, and there were Spartans that people loved in Halo Reach, and people want to see these other Spartan outfits and what happened with them, so we can see what happens in the future. But yeah, between Halo 2 and Reach is between mine on there.
I for some reason I didn't play as much of the multiplayer. I played a little
Yeah,
in Reach, but not too much. But Halo 2 was just it was this awesome combination of between an insanely good and epic campaign,
yeah,
and then of course at its time we didn't have that many games that you were able to play online
yeah,
on the OG Xbox, right?
yeah.
And it was the game that brought me to console online gaming, and it was just insanely good, man. Yeah.
I
It's
love getting off
always
track.
super fun. It's like Red Dead. We could continue that. Red Dead 1 and 2. People are also arguing. I'm
Oh,
definitely in the Red Dead 1 camp. Um, Red Dead 2 was fantastic.
yeah.
It's
From what I've played
absolutely.
of Red Dead 2 so far, because that was one of the games that I've never actually got through to. From what I've played from it, it's fantastic. Don't get us wrong, but I haven't had the initial same impressions I've had with Red Dead 2 as I did with Red Dead 1. I'm not sure if that'll change the further I get into Red Dead 2, but
the
as it
the problem. I think I wouldn't call it a problem, but the thing is, you kind of know how the game ends after chapter 2 or act 2
mm,
in Red Dead 2. And the other thing is that I thought it was sometimes that it didn't hit the same great pacing that the first one had.
mm,
It was like, okay, you ride to that mission and you had to ride through a insanely beautiful and well-crafted world, but then after 5 minutes of horseback riding, you arrived at the mission and the mission was finished in 2 minutes. And it was like this was the little thing that why I say Red Dead 1 was like just from start to finish. I only have like 6 games that I consider 10 out of 10, and Red Dead 1 is one of them.
yeah,
And the ending hit me like barely any game has, because I did not see it coming,
yeah,
And in Red Dead 2, you kind of know after Act 2 what will happen to Arthur.
yeah.
Um, and it's Red Dead 1, man, over Red Dead 2. I know I will get a lot of hate for
I know
that.
Umbra is saying Red
Maybe.
Dead 2 is a masterpiece, and it is. It's still a masterpiece. I'm also so far still in the camp of preferred 1 better so far than 2. From what I've played so far, still time because I've still got to get through the rest of Red Dead 2 at some point.
Which is weird that you haven't finished it yet.
Yeah, it was
But,
one that
yeah.
you know where it is. It was we now know a game is as big as it is, and I know Red Dead 2 is massive.
Yeah,
It daunts me.
it is.
It don't when I know it's that big. It daunts us, and I'm like, I'll put it on the when I've got time. when I've got time.
Yeah, but you really shouldn't, because it
Yeah.
is worth every minute.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with Fable?
Oh, I think Fable 2 gets it for me.
Yeah, I agree.
When I'm thinking about all three, 3 went into just a bit wild. Like 3 went a bit wild.
It was,
One was okay, one
although
was good, but it was a
you
little
know, I
bit.
finished Fable 3 completely in couch co-op
Yeah.
from start to finish. And of course, when you play it like that,
Yeah.
it is just a different
Oh,
experience, you
absolutely.
know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Fable 2 takes the cake for that one for me. I think overall,
But I agree. Fable 2 was just absolutely awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, man. We could talk the entire podcast
About
about that.
about the best of trilogies. Yeah.
One last. Where do you stand with the Arkham series?
You're gonna hate this for this. Never played them. Ever.
Man, why do I do this podcast with you?
Yeah. You know me though, me and superhero games, right? It's the same like
Yeah.
even with Spidey. Like Spidey
Yeah,
was
I know.
cool.
You're
It
not
was
a
it was kind
superhero
of
fan.
it was alright, but it's not something that really engages us, and it's not something I'm massively high on. If they brought a new Deadpool game out, however, where it's ridiculous Deadpool humor, that's an entirely different story because that's just an action adventure game with some witty comedic character that's in the front.
Yeah.
I can get on board with that. I got on board with Guardians of the Galaxy because again, it had awesome 80s music, it had awesome combat, the story was cool, and it was funny. And that was just so well done, the way they done Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
those kind of
true.
games, fantastic. But in general, I'm not the biggest superhero guy, so I'm the worst person to ask that question to. So yeah, people keep talking
So
about
I'll
how
tell
great
you,
Batman was for
it's
its
Arkham
action and
City.
adventure and things like that. And
It is.
I take their word for it. I will do. But it's not one I've ever wanted to get into. I've never been a big Batman fan.
Well,
I have enjoyed the more recent films of Batman. Not the I haven't watched the newest one, but I loved the Dark
Batman,
Knight trilogy.
yeah.
The Dark Knight trilogy was fantastic. But that was because
And-
of more the villains than it was Batman.
Yeah, but then I can't imagine that you wouldn't love the Arkham series. The Arkham series had the best Joker. I know everyone says Heath Ledger was the best Joker ever, but I hardly disagree. Mark Hamill in the Arkham series as the Joker.
Well, I was going to say Mark Hamill, but Mark Hamill, for me, though, is the Joker from the original cartoon.
Yeah. But he's on another level in the Arkham series.
Yeah.
Like,
But even saying that,
insanely
but
good.
films-wise, the only ones I got interested in was the Dark Knight trilogy. And that
Okay.
was for the villains, not for Batman. I couldn't give a shit about
Yeah.
Batman. I loved watching What's His Face as Bane. I think he did an amazing Bane. I liked that backstory. And I loved Heath Ledger as the Joker. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, it was... In terms of actual Batman, I couldn't care about Batman. I enjoyed the small role of Robin as you see Robin get introduced into the Dark Knight trilogy, specifically for the Bane film. I enjoyed watching Robin come into it as the police officer, and you only just realize afterwards that it's Robin. So yeah, that's what I enjoyed about that. Not so much the games. I'm not bothered about playing as Batman because I don't really care about Batman. Sorry.
I don't know what to make of it, man.
Now,
I don't know what to
again,
make
however, I loved Logan, so I am super looking forward to Wolverine
of that.
because it's more Logan than it is the X-Men Wolverine, of course, in that game. So I'm looking
Have
forward
you
to
seen Deadpool and
Deadpool.
Wolverine?
Yes, fucking unbelievable film. Yes, loved
Yeah.
it. Loved it. Loved it. Which is why I would love a Deadpool game with Ryan Reynolds reprising his role as the character. That would do unbelievable numbers.
Yeah.
Even if you
I agree.
get because I've heard the combat is fantastic with the Batman Arcane games. If you get
It
those
is.
to do the new Deadpool, but with Ryan Reynolds playing Deadpool, with their combat capabilities that they did for Arcane,
Now we're
with more
talking, man.
gore, you're onto a winner.
Umbra says Mark Hamill's Joker is significantly better than Ledger's Joker. I agree. And Lily says Jack Nicholson's Joker was the best. Yeah, man, Jack Nicholson. I mean, especially if you think about the time, yeah, at the early 90s.
I remember Jack Nicholson's Joker as well,
that. Yeah.
But then I also
that.
remember Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Mr. Freeze or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, that was like with Val Kilmer as Batman. Yeah, no.
And then what's his face
We forget that
as the Riddler, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. Yeah.
and then Penguin, and then what's his the little guy is Penguin. Forgotten his name.
Danny DeVito.
Yes. Yeah.
That was good. That was
They
good.
were
though. That was a good
unbelievably
movie.
cheesy.
Yeah. If you watch them
Catwoman
now,
and Venom
back
and
in the time,
Poison
the
Ivy. and...
two, yeah, but that was a different. The first two with Nicholson as the Joker, and the second one with Danny DeVito, and what's her name as Catwoman? Blanking right now, but those two were pretty awesome. Pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, they were
Now
just
I wanna
super. I
watch
remember them.
Batman
I
and
remember
play
them
Arkham
films.
again,
I
man.
did watch them films, and when I think about them now, I'm like, God, they are unbelievably cringy. Like unbelievably
Yeah, but
cringy.
it was a different time.
It was a different
time.
It was a different time, but that's part of the reason why I wasn't really into big superhero films. I'm like, Jesus Christ, these aren't good. Like, then we've had, of course, and what hasn't helped is we had a stage of the Avengers films being absolutely amazing and getting fantastic films, and then you had Deadpool's made a resurgence thanks to Ryan Reynolds and co. And hit the Red Deadpool films have been fantastic. Guardians of the Galaxy films have been fun. And then you went in another unfortunate stage where the superhero films have been terrible again. Like outside of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was the cartoon version, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like that was great, but the rest, like others recently, none of the superhero films have been really blowing the doors off. They've been quite lackluster. So it's not really helped that case recently.
Yeah.
And again, video
That's
games
true.
wise, the only one that's been successful video games wise since the Arkham series has been Insomniac's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, even though it didn't hit unbelievable sales numbers, the Guardians of the Galaxy game, I would always recommend because it was fantastic.
That is one hell of a superhero game.
Yeah.
Commercially, it wasn't a success, but the game itself was absolutely awesome. Loved it. The humor and everything. It was really, really good. All right, Dutch. Let us move on. One smaller topic before we get into the big main topics of the week. The PlayStation 5 Pro comes out in a couple of days, right? I think embargoes are going to lift in 3 days or 4 days.
Yeah.
It'll come out next week. And this week, the PlayStation CEO Hideaki Nishino, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
You give it a good shot.
I gave it a chance, but talked a little bit about it, and he said something interesting. The PlayStation 5 Pro was a 5-year project. Yeah, so development of the Pro started before the PS5 came out.
Right.
So it's always been a plan for them to do such a mid-gen upgrade this gen. And in a side sentence, he mentioned that this will help them to achieve their 10-year cycle goal for the PS5 generation.
10 years.
It's 10 years is what he said. It is they had at least the 10 years plan when the PS5 came out to have a 10-year generation. So the days are definitely gone where we had talked about like 5-6 years generation with the PS1 and the PS2 and so on. But I thought it is interesting for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
The PS5 Pro comes out, next week. And I totally agree with Lily in the chat. She says, really, it's coming out next week. There's like no commercial nowhere about it. I agree. I haven't seen anything like other than a couple of people posting that they have been sent the review copies, which I wouldn't say is advertisement or marketing per se. I haven't seen any commercials or anything, but it is interesting. They obviously planned this entire generation to have that PS5 Pro 5-year development cycle for that thing, and with a 10-year generation in mind, which is crazy to think that you can launch a console in 2020 and still think that like 8-9 years later, in the year 2029, you will still be able to play remotely state-of-the-art games on it. It's like kind of a ridiculous thought. I haven't seen anyone pick that up though, so I definitely wanted to talk to you about this.
I'm not.
What are your
thoughts
before I share mine?
The reason we need to get away from this and have shorter cycles is because we've said it multiple times. Technology advances significantly quicker than consoles do.
Yeah.
And even if you have the PS4 Pro launching this year in a matter of days, it's still another over 5 years with the same console.
4 years into the...
Yeah. You're 4 years into it now. We're going into December very shortly. So technically another 5 years with the same generation. In 5 years' time, you'll be on to like 7-8 series RTX cards, and it'll be significantly more advanced than we are now. And we need to get, like we've spoke about this before with the mobile phone segment, but there's a reason mobile phones are consistently releasing versions every year. And it isn't to try and just get money. It's because technology's changing that much. The boards are getting significantly smaller. The chips are getting significantly smaller. You'd be able to do more with less. The costs are less. You can get bigger, better screens. You can get more powerful things. The batteries are lasting longer. The efficiency of each of these phones are lasting longer. The cameras are getting better. So on and so forth. But every year is gradual implementation of new things. And the reason to do it is to keep up with what they need to do going forwards. Imagine having a mobile phone and expecting it in 10 years' time to still hold the battery, to still keep up with things that are going on in the world, to still do what you need to do with things that have advanced. It just wouldn't happen. You wouldn't be able to do that. Like we always joked about the Switch, because the Switch was already 5 years outdated when it originally released. It had like a 10-year-old mobile card built into it. It was ridiculous. And coming out now, we know the next Switch anyway is probably going to be on par with the One X PS4 Pro, which is horrific. Like, it's horrific if you think about it. But for Nintendo, that's fantastic. Like,
It's so weird. You think about it, that this Switch 2 is going to come out probably early next year, and it'll be on par like 8-year-old consoles.
Yeah.
You sell that as state of the art then? It's so weird. So I was also like a little... Okay, man, did they really think the PS5 generation will last 10 years? I mean, maybe plans changed by now. The way he phrased it is that when they launched the PS5, had the PS5 Pro already in mind because they wanted to do a 10-year console cycle. So
But
it
they've
has
also,
always
yeah,
been.
but he's also said with the release of the PS5 Pro, it's in line with their 10-year cycle.
Yeah.
So that stipulates to me that they are still planning this as a 10-year cycle.
And if they do plan that as a 10-year cycle, and maybe plans change because Xbox is doing something else, it'll still be like an 8-9 year cycle. And that means that you kind of need to sell the PS5 Pro now to consumers that already have the PS5 and I mean outside of the hardcore bubble that will upgrade anyway, because otherwise you won't be able to like withstand state of or run state of the art games. We think about 4 years from now, in the year 2028, the demand of the engines will be nuts, and so you kind of need to bring the PS5 Pro then to the consumers, and I don't see any effort to do that. Not with the price point. We've talked about the horrific price point before. I don't see it like in terms of marketing or anything. And maybe that will change next week once the console is out. Maybe, yeah. But we kind of need to remind ourselves that we are not talking about this hardcore bubble that we are all probably in. And we are on Twitter every day, and in a super small bubble of hardcore gamers that will definitely be aware the console is out. And yes, if I don't know, a Dragon Age gets a PS5 Pro patch, it'll run best on that machine. And but if you really want to sustain like a 9 or 10 year console cycle, you kind of have to get that thing out to the mass market, and the mass market is not going to pick it up at the price point and without marketing and everything. So it's really a weird way. And I honestly thought one of the first things that popped into my head when I read this, the rumors are out there that Xbox is going to launch the next gen early. Rumor is 26. If PlayStation really wants to do like a 9 or 10 year console cycle this gen, a 26 launch could like insanely behoove Xbox, right? Yeah. You would get like an insanely big head start. We're not talking about a year or so, like they had the 1 year advantage with the 360, which already helped them a lot. If you remember, that was the only generation where Xbox was basically on par at the end of the gen with PlayStation in terms of install base. And for Xbox now to launch a console in 26 would be like an even more insane move if Sony really does this 10-year cycle, and it definitely will change their plans. But that if you haven't started next gen development already now or a couple of years ago, you won't be like, it takes 5 years to develop a console. It's just a fact. Yeah. And maybe you can speed things a little up and do a 4.5 year development cycle, but that will still lead them to the year 28, 29 and 26 release for Xbox. Man, I sure hope they are doing that, man. I sure hope that would be like, it would make the console market interesting again. And it's not just me rooting for Xbox here, which I do because not of console war things, but because I want proper competition. Everyone knows that I'm always pro competition, and that would actually make an even smarter move if that 10-year cycle from Sony is actually true. So I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It would be for Xbox, it's a benefit because that means that they'll get ahead of the game. When it comes to technology, and that means they'll always be one step ahead of the game. If they shorten the life cycles, that means they're always going to have the newer and better hardware going forwards. If they say, okay, we're no longer doing mid-gen refreshes, now we're just going to do a new
Do
console every
6-year
6
cycles
years.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5-6 years. And I think if you think about it, a 6-year console cycle, it is really hard to make an argument against that, because the first 2 years of the next gen will be cross-gen anyway, right? So even if Xbox brings out their next gen console in 26, we will still be able to play the new releases on the Series consoles in 27 and probably also in 28.
Yeah.
So you have that overlap anyway. But like you said earlier, if you think about how fast technology moves,
Yeah.
it is just crazy to think that you can live even with an 8-year console cycle. It's like we are 4 years now into the generation. You can tell, yeah, that the consoles are outpowered. It's not even close to what a mid-size PC. We're not talking the super high-end PCs will always be like in a different league, yeah. But if you talk about a mid-size gaming PC, that's the ballpark where the consoles should play a part, and we are not in that after 4 years into gen. So we can live through 25 with the series, but then in 26, of course, it would totally make sense, man.
Yeah. It would. I don't get the thinking behind, oh, we're going to do a 10-year cycle. They know themselves how much technology advances in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense. If you want to stay ahead of the game, especially if you see how quickly PC advances year on year on year on year on year. Like, there's no wonder we've got so many cross-gen games, because we're just lagging behind so much.
I agree. But this is again brings me back to the competition thing. You can only do that if you think you have an absolute market lead, and it doesn't matter. Of course, it makes a huge difference in the development budget.
Yeah.
It takes billions of dollars or euros to develop a new console.
Yeah.
And the question is, do you want to do that every 5-6 years, or do you want to do that every 10 years? And you can do the 10 years, of course, if there's no competition in the market, because then people really don't have a choice. If you take Xbox out of the picture, let's assume, they wouldn't have any competition whatsoever.
Yeah.
Of course, why not do a 10-year cycle and save the money? Because people don't really have a choice. The other choice they have is the Switch, and we don't need to talk about that in terms of there's no AAA game coming to the Switch other than the Nintendo games themselves. Right? Try playing Call of Duty. Well, Call of Duty is supposedly coming to Switch. Let's see about that. Maybe the Switch too then. But try to play Dragon Age there. There's no chance. So if you don't have the option, and for that reason, we need competition, and Sony needs to buckle up and take the money and develop more frequently better hardware. I mean, they kind of did now with the Pro. Yeah, I give them that. But you know what I mean in terms of new gen tech. So yeah, let's stay on Sony for a bit. This week they announced that they are shutting down Firewalk.
Yes.
Studio that made the incredibly successful Concord.
Yes. Yes.
You all remember the Concord? It was out for what?
2 weeks.
7-8 days? Not even 2 weeks.
It was 11 days, I think. 11 days.
11, maybe 11 days, 11 days. Cost $200 million to make.
That's without anything else. That's without the studio costs.
Without and marketing and such overhead. $200 million game that was only out for 11 days before they pulled the plug, refunded people that bought the game, and that studio is now being shut down.
Yep.
What are your thoughts, man?
Extremely harsh. A lot of the blame lies on Sony, I think. They knew what was going to happen with that game, but they ultimately set the price point because they are the company owners of it. And I think they should need to shoulder some of that burden. We said the game was going to die well before it did anyway, because you don't release an arena shooter, arena hero shooter, in a market full of free-to-play arena shooters at a £40 price point. Even if it does have built-in season features, it makes no difference because people just will not invest in it initially. Why would you? Because there's better alternatives that don't cost anything for entry.
Yeah.
And they found that out to their detriment when there was less than 2,000 people playing the game at launch.
Yeah.
Less than the beta, which was free and open.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think there's part of the blame is the studio for thinking they're going to get involved in a very competitive space with some absolute heavyweights that just dominate that space. And then the other side is Sony being, should we say, ignorant and intentional with putting a price point on a game that shouldn't have had a price point on it. It should have been free to play from the off. That would have been the only way to save that game. But instead, they just canned it. And now the studio has paid the price for that. It's never nice. Yeah. It's never nice to see people lose their jobs. Of which a lot of people have lost their jobs, of course, this week over that. Ultimately, it's lesson learned from both studio direction and even if you say, oh, well, they took a risk on making... It wasn't a risk, they were playing it safe but made stupid choices. You're playing it safe by doing a game in a genre that's already very popular. But you made very stupid choices in how you put that game out and how you advertise that game and how you price that game.
I agree.
So it wasn't even the fact that they took a risk. It wasn't like they did something new because there was nothing new about Concord. You could go out on a limb and say if, for instance, somebody made a brand new horror game and that doesn't do well, or a brand new action RPG, brand new IP, and that doesn't do well, and they've kind of implemented some new systems and things like that, then you would go, well, at least they attempted to take a risk and do something new. But ultimately, they haven't done anything new, and they made some silly choices from a board level, and the developers have paid the price.
I agree. I mean, listen, I had many thoughts going through my head. Of course, it is super unfortunate for the developers themselves. They got acquired by Sony. They released the game. We don't really know the insights. We can only speculate. But I would be super surprised if the decision wasn't with Sony to choose the business model to release it as a full price game. That usually isn't the studio's decision in such an organization. Obviously, it's the publisher, and that's Sony. And so, yeah, I feel sorry for the developers. But then I also noticed two things. The first is, and how do I phrase that without sounding too console war-y, but the way how media and many people on the socials discussed that closure.
Yeah.
Again, another Sony closure versus the way how they reported about it when Microsoft shut down studios, because it is basically the same thing.
It's exactly the same thing, except Microsoft did it significantly in a way that didn't make sense because they had games that released that were popular and then closed the popular studio down.
And then closed the studio down.
Which made little sense. On the Sony side, however, You can understand it, but it still needs called out.
It is basically still the same thing. Herman Holst even used basically the same phrasing like Phil Spencer did. Remember when Phil shut down the Redfall studio Arcane, and I'm blanking on the name of Hi-Fi Rush, was God help me,
Tango Gameworks.
Tango Gameworks. He said, well, he's not in a position to run a business that doesn't make money. And listen, what did Herman Holtz say this week? He's not in a position to run a business that doesn't make money, right? That was the official explanation. Basically the same wording, or almost the same wording used. So it's the same thing. And the question is, why is there always this kind of double standard? This is just something I noticed. I get that publishers need to run the business as profitable as possible, and a studio that just burned you $200 million. At the end of the day, well, you kind of need to think: is it worth keeping that studio?
On the flip side, for me, on that situation is you knew they were making that game when you purchased them.
Exactly.
If you didn't like
the game you made.
Yeah, if you didn't like the game at that point, you wouldn't have purchased the studio, which means you need to take some of the responsibility. I would even if they burnt 200 million on the first game and it wasn't successful, you go, right, listen, first one hasn't worked out. We've still got trust in the studio's talents to make something better for the next one. So this was a horrific learning experience. It didn't go well. Let's just dust ourselves down and we'll do something else. And let's hope the next project is successful. If that next project is not successful, then understandably, you go, right, this just hasn't worked out. Unfortunately, we're going to have to close the studio. But to buy the studio knowing full well the title that they were developing, and the Sony's and PlayStation's own board level fuck ups with the pricing and the way that the game was advertised and the way that the game was put out, because ultimately that's down to them as much as it's down to the studio.
Absolutely.
They are as much take that burden of responsibility as the studio does.
Yeah.
Studio can only do so much. And the studio themselves, we know this from the studio level, they don't set the price. That's ultimately up to PlayStation as to what they want to set the price of that game at. They don't go, oh yeah, we're going to make this, or we're going to do this. Because Xbox go, okay, well, we're going to put all these games in Gamepass, but the price of this game is going to be this. They set that price.
They set the price.
Yeah.
The game should have launched for free, or at least in PS Plus, at least, and then at a lower, retail price of.
Then you think back to, okay, we've had an absolutely horrific open beta where literally nobody has played the game. Before we release, this is what we're going to do.
You kind of have to rethink.
We're going to refund the people that have already pre-ordered, and we're going to release this game as free to play. We're going to have to delay it by a few more weeks. We're going to have to rejig the game's built-in things to
even
to
a
make
couple
it
of
free
months,
to play.
if that's the case. But I think they felt like they can get away with it because they didn't have anything outside of Astrobot lined up for this year, and they kind of needed this thing, and they looked at how well Helldivers 2 did, also a full retail priced game, and it was just not a smart decision. So, but seeing the media report just with the typical double standard is the one thing that I noticed. Yeah, if Xbox shuts down a studio, we have weeks and weeks of articles written about it, and how bad Game Pass is for the industry, and how much Satya screws up the Xbox strategy, and that Phil is not having a proper vision, and the headlines, and we didn't see anything remotely to that. And it's not the first closure of a studio on the Sony side either, right? This layoff period and shutting down studios is not just a Sony and Xbox thing; it's an industry-wide thing. But somehow it's always different story when it's
Yeah.
Xbox, right? So this is the first thing. The second thing, and that is probably even more concerning for us gamers, is because at the end of the day, we're all smart enough to make our own decisions, no matter the headlines of the media.
Yeah.
That is the other thing, that it just looks that Sony is really, really struggling with their online and games as a service strategy. You
Yep.
just can't get the hang of it. Yes, there was Helldivers. Helldivers was not a first party title. It was a second party deal. The game is developed by an independent studio, Arrowhead. They bought the exclusivity. It is a little different.
Yeah.
But
And they've even come out and said they'd like the game to be on Xbox. It's just up to Sony and
yes,
Microsoft.
it is up to them to figure it out, right? And then it's, but if you look at the first party portfolio from Sony, and they have, yes, it was Jim Ryan's strategy to have these 10 or 12 games as a service titles. Half of them were canned. You look at Faction, what happened to Factions is one IP where people were actually really excited to have like a multiplayer version of it, right?
Yeah.
They canned that. Concord was like one of the biggest failures I can remember in video game history, honestly, to have a massive game with a 200 million budget behind it only be available for 11 days before you actually had to pull the hard plug and really take it offline and refund everyone. Like it's hard for me to think of another game that had something happen like that. There have been big names. You think about the Avengers game, yes, probably a similar budget reason with especially with licensing all the IP and whatnot, but at least that game ran for a good year or two, right? Yeah. And yeah, nobody really liked it or played it, but they tried to continue the support. Or think of Suicide Squad earlier this year. Yeah, big budget behind it. I loved it, but no one played it, and it's. But to really take it down that way, it just shows you that they are really struggling with their games as a service titles, yeah. And the next big one is supposedly going to be Marathon from Bungie, right?
At least that's cross-platform.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. They made sure after announcing this week that they close Firewalk down, that they reinsured everyone. Yeah, Marathon is going to be multiplayer. That was super important suddenly, yeah. But of course, you think about that. Is Bungie going to suffer a similar fate, right? Because with the Factions, at least you can say Naughty Dog is not going to be closed down because they still have their single player IP, one of the core pillars in the Sony roster. Yeah, you're not going to close down a Naughty Dog, but they did it with Firewalk. What's going to happen with Marathon? Is that game going to be set up for failure as well? We haven't seen any gameplay yet. The game is supposedly coming out next year. They reassured that. Yeah, we are in good track for 25 release, and we are closing out 24 now. We're in November already. We haven't seen any footage yet. So, and for them to announce like Firewalk, shut it down, and like literally a couple of hours later to come out and reassure about Marathon, and it just tells you, okay, Sony is really struggling with that games as a service or multiplayer kind of games, right?
Yeah. Well, they are struggling with it, but they're also, and we said this before, they just don't have the ability, and they don't have the it's not the ability to make a great game, because they probably could make a great game, but they don't have the ability to withstand the pressures of live service games. From a director standpoint, the reason Microsoft has been successful with live service games for Xbox isn't because they've launched in a good way. It's because they've stuck through them when they've been not in a good place, and they've allowed the studio to continue the vision to get it to a place that actually is successful. That takes hard work, that takes confidence in your studios, and it takes a little bit of financial pressure behind to say, listen, we're not going to make money immediately on this thing. We're probably going to make a loss for the first year or so whilst this game gets up and running, finds its user base, and we've got some content rolling into it. Microsoft have the nous to be able to sit back and allow the studios to get things done. We've seen that with Sea of Thieves, which had a terrible launch. It was lacking so much content and became successful. Even if people didn't class Halo as the greatest of launches, Microsoft have still sat back and said, like, we're still going to give you time to get the multiplayer sorted. We're still going to give you the time to sort out the live service plan for this thing. And they've countlessly added to Halo Infinite to the part where it is still being played today, and they've still got content rolled out for it. And they've just adding a new weapon to the game for the first time, and they're just adding more content and maps and playlists to the game, and they're doing that continuously. And it's not the only game, because it's the same with Forza Horizon, the live service, where they continuously support that, and that's add-ons. And there is an abundance of showing that these things can continue to thrive even if they haven't been successful at launch. That Microsoft is willing to stand by them in order to make them successful. And we said this before Concord launched. One of the reasons that none of these games will ever be successful is because Sony do not have the ability to sit back and make sure that any of these live service games could be successful if given the chance to be. But they have to be willing to lose money first in order to make money. And Sony are not willing to lose money. If a studio loses money, they can the studio or can the project entirely and move on to the next thing. Instead of going, right, it's not yet successful, but it can be if we get the content right. And they would make a successful live service game if they were able to do that, but they're not willing to. Sony are just not willing to, and
especially since the market is so competitive.
and
Like
we've
you
seen
mentioned
Naughty Dog
earlier.
say that as well, because Naughty Dog came out and said the reason we didn't continue with Factions was because it was going to take so significant resources in order to run this game, and we're not going to put that resource into it. Is essentially the rundown. We are unwilling to part with the staff to maintain the content rollout or the money in order to maintain the content rollout for a live service game. That tells me that if one of their best and brightest studios is unwilling to do it, then it's just not meant to be for Sony. They don't have the nous to stick back and wait for something to become successful with hard work. They want it to be successful at launch or not at all. If it's not successful at launch and it doesn't make big numbers, and we've seen that with Days Gone, it didn't hit the numbers, so they canned the franchise.
Even though it was
a single player game,
still
fantastic.
a fairly successul game in itself. It sold
8 million.
I think in the first year, 8 million or so.
Yeah. I think it finished
I
around
don't
the 10
really
mark.
remember. Yeah. So every other publisher would consider it still a success.
Yeah.
So
massively successful.
Yeah, man.
It's just a damn shame, but Sony, they've grown to the point where unless they're immediately successful, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
They will can anything that isn't an immediate success.
Agree. Yeah, man. Let us move away from Sony for a bit and go back to Xbox. Obviously, they had a big launch the other week. Black Ops 6 launched as a massive success. It is the record-breaking Call of Duty launch. Sitting at a record for day one players. And another record they broke is Gamepass subscriber ads.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not just that. The unit sales on PlayStation and Steam were also up 60% year over year.
Yeah.
For Call of Duty. So I think we can bury the narrative that Game Pass kills games once and for all, right? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Game Pass does not kill games. It doesn't kill game sales either, because people will ultimately still buy games. They want the game.
Yeah.
So some people just have that mentality where they go, I know it's in Game Pass, but I'm going to buy it anyway. Or I always buy Call of Duties anyway, so I'll just do it. Or Steam players that just want, okay, well, I'm just going to get it on Battle.net anyway, instead of on Xbox's thing. I know I can get it on Xbox, but I'd rather play it on Battle.net, because I've got all my Call of Duties on there. And PC players are like that, and they'll just stay that way. And then you've got still an influx of people that probably got sick of buying Call of Duties all the time because they've never been great, going and playing it on Game Pass, and they're enjoying it. And a lot of those people will be cross sales. There'll be people that go, actually, I'm going to buy the game now because I love playing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on PC, people are very, very much hooked to Steam, right? Epic has been trying to get into the PC storefront for years with absolutely zero success. PC Game Pass is slightly growing number, but yeah, people on PC just buy their games on Steam. And even on console, adding new subscribers really doesn't hurt their business case, obviously, because most people are longer subscribed than a month that it takes them to finish a game, especially with a game like a Call of Duty. So, and besides that is the viral effect, right? Is what we always say when it comes to this Game Pass discussion. You cannot just look at the pure metrics. Yes, you will probably make on a short term more revenue by selling the game once, rather than in a subscription service that you can get for 17 euros a month, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, but it's this